She thought she could get a black man removed from first class with just a few carefully chosen words, until he calmly reached into his pocket and showed his FBI badge. Patricia Morales strolled through Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport. Her designer carry-on luggage glided smoothly behind her. She had taken this flight route countless times before. Dallas to Washington, D.C., first class, the only way she ever traveled. Everything about air travel seemed predictable to her. The priority boarding, the complimentary champagne, the whispered conversations among professionals. She expected comfort in exclusivity. So when she approached her row and saw a black man in an impeccable navy blue suit already seated next to her, her steps faltered. He had an air of quiet confidence, his laptop open, eyes scanning the screen as if reviewing something important. Patricia's lips tightened. She set her designer bag down too hard and took her seat, barely hiding her displeasure. First class wasn't supposed to be like this. The man next to her, Daniel Vega, barely acknowledged her. He was focused, typing effortlessly, absorbed in his work. The glow of his laptop reflected off his dark skin, highlighting the sharp angles of his face. He had the composure of someone who belonged there. Patricia, however, was not convinced. She inhaled sharply through her nose, shifting in her seat. Her bag accidentally touched his armrest. No reaction. She sat up straighter, looking around as if waiting for a flight attendant to notice this mistake. Then she took it a step further. She leaned slightly toward him, just enough to make her presence known. "Excuse me," her carefully polite voice said. "Are you sure you are in the right seat?" Daniel didn't even look up. Yes, that was it. No elaboration, no explanation. She cleared her throat, looking around again. This time she caught the attention of a flight attendant, Elena Jimenez, a young woman in her early 30s who had been helping passengers a few rows ahead. Patricia raised her hand slightly, motioning for Elena to come over. Daniel sighed subtly but noticeably. Elena approached with her usual professional smile. "Is everything all right, ma'am?" Patricia forced a small laugh, shaking her head as if she found the situation amusing. "I think there's been a little mix-up. I believe this gentleman is in the wrong seat." Elena looked at Daniel, who finally paused his writing and looked up. His expression was unreadable, but there was something in his eyes, not surprise, not confusion, something else. Elena pulled up the passenger manifest on her tablet, quickly scanning the seat assignments. "Actually, Mr. Vega is in his correct seat," she said politely. "His ticket says 2A, and he's in 2B. Patricia blinked, her fingers tightened around the edge of her armrest. "How strange," she said, forcing a laugh. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure. I just assumed." Elena smiled, already sensing where this was going. "I'm sure, ma'am. Everything looks correct." Patricia's face tightened. Her carefully controlled expression wavered for a split second before she smoothed it out with a tight-lipped smile. "Well," she exhaled, "I guess mistakes happen." She turned back to the window, but she wasn't done. Not even close. Daniel, meanwhile, had already gone back to work. Elena hesitated for a second, feeling the tension. Then she gave Daniel a quick nod before walking away. But Patricia was seething. Her fingers drummed against her knee. Her breathing was shallow, her eyes darting to the flight crew, then back to Daniel. He wasn't reacting. He wasn't explaining himself or offering reassurances. He wasn't playing the little game she expected him to play. That made her angrier. She wasn't the type of woman to let things go, but Patricia isn't the type to suffer in silence. She decides to take action. Patricia sat stiffly, arms crossed over her chest, her mind racing. This wasn't right. She had flown first class for decades and had never, not once, had she been put in a situation like this. The man next to her wasn't doing anything wrong, but that didn't matter. He didn't belong. Her breathing quickened, her irritation bubbling just below the surface. She couldn't just sit here and accept this. She pressed the call button. A soft chime sounded overhead, and Elena Jimenez reappeared moments later. Her smile was the same as before, professional and warm. "Ma'am, is there anything I can help you with?" Patricia kept her voice low, her tone carefully measured. "I'd like to request a seat change." Elena blinked. "Oh, you're uncomfortable. Is there a problem with the seat itself?" Patricia hesitated for half a second. She couldn't just say what she was really thinking. Instead, she tilted her head toward Daniel, lowering her voice even further. "I just don't feel comfortable sitting here," she said, her words slow and deliberate. Elena's smile faded. "I'm sorry to hear that, ma'am. If there's a technical problem with the seat, I'd be happy to. No, it's not the seat, Patricia interrupted. She exhaled sharply. I just prefer to sit somewhere else. Elena looked at Daniel, who had paused his typing again, but hadn't said a word. He was listening, waiting. His fingers hovered over the keyboard, his jaw tense. Let me check if there are any seats available, Elena said, tapping her tablet. Just a moment. Patricia leaned back, her lips pressed into a firm line. Daniel didn't react, didn't argue, didn't acknowledge her, didn't ask why she felt uncomfortable, which only made her angrier. A few rows ahead, a man in a blazer turned his head slightly, pretending to check his phone, but clearly listening. Across the aisle, a woman nudged her husband. People were noticing. Elena's fingers moved quickly across the screen. I'm afraid we're at full capacity today, ma'am. There are no first-class seats available. Patricia's stomach tightened. Elena smiled apologetically. Would you like me to check economy class? There might be a seat available there. Patricia's face burned. Economy, as if she would ever. Her voice caught in her throat. That's not going to work. Elena's smile didn't waver. In that case, I hope you don't mind staying in your assigned seat. Patricia forced a thin-lipped smile. I guess I have no choice. Elena nodded. Let me know if you need anything else. She walked away, but Patricia barely noticed. Her ears were ringing. Daniel, still silent, turned back to his laptop and resumed typing. That was it. That was his answer. He was just going to pretend she didn't exist. Her fingers curled into fists. This wasn't over. She exhaled sharply and pressed the call button again. This time Elena hesitated before returning. Ms. Patricia sat up straight. I need to speak to someone in charge. Elena PC's face remained neutral. I am the senior flight attendant on this flight. Is there anything I can clarify for you? Patricia's voice sharpened. I need to speak to the crew chief or the pilot. A murmur spread through the cabin. Someone let out a quiet laugh. Elena's expression remained professional, but her patience was clearly wearing thin. Ma'am, the pilot is preparing for takeoff and will not be available, but I am happy to help you. Patricia pursed her lips, her jaw tightening. Daniel wasn't reacting. He wasn't nervous. He wasn't shifting uncomfortably. It was as if he had done this dance before. She lowered her voice again. I don't feel safe. That changed everything. Elena's smile disappeared. Her body stiffened. Daniel stopped typing. Across the aisle, a middle-aged man wearing a Bluetooth headset muttered, Here we go again? Elena straightened up. I'm sorry, ma'am, but could you clarify what you mean? Patricia folded her hands neatly in her lap, tilting her head slightly. I just don't feel comfortable. She hesitated just long enough to imply something without saying it directly. I don't want to be difficult, but I think it would be better if someone else took this seat. Daniel closed his laptop. This time he looked her straight in the eye, and for the first time Patricia felt a flicker of uncertainty. But Patricia wasn't going to let this go, and now she was getting louder. A silence settled over the cabin. The weight of Patricia's words hung in the air. I don't feel safe. The phrase was powerful. It wasn't loud, but it didn't need to be. It was carefully chosen, designed to elicit a response. Elena, still standing beside her, didn't move immediately. Her posture stiffened, and her eyes darted to Daniel, who had now closed his laptop completely, hands resting on top of it. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't frowning. He was just looking at Patricia, studying her. Patricia didn't flinch. Not yet. Elena exhaled slowly. Ma'am, she said carefully, are you saying you feel threatened? Patricia tilted her head slightly, giving the smallest of shrugs. I'm not saying that. I just don't feel comfortable. That's all. Across the aisle, the businessman with the Bluetooth sneered and muttered, Unbelievable. A young woman 3 rows back raised her phone slightly, pretending to text but clearly recording. A few other passengers whispered among themselves, heads turning in Patricia's direction. Patricia noticed she could feel the shift. The tide was turning against her, but she wasn't going to back down. This is a simple request, she continued to feign politeness. I'm just asking to be accommodated. If I'm uncomfortable, I should have the right to change seats. Shouldn't I? Elena's jaw tightened. Ma'am, I already checked, and there are no first-class seats available. Patricia pressed her lips together. An economy class. Elena hesitated. There are 2 seats available in economy. Patricia straightened up. Perfect. He can take one of those. A low wave of murmuring spread through the cabin. Daniel took a deep breath, his fingers drumming once on the surface of his laptop before coming to rest. He wasn't arguing, he wasn't responding, but he wasn't moving either. Elena blinked as if replaying Patricia's words in her mind to make sure she had heard correctly. Ma'am, her voice was lower now, firmer. Just to clarify, you want me to move this passenger to economy because you don't want to sit next to him? Patricia nodded once, sitting up straighter. Yes, Elena inhaled through her nose. That's not going to happen. Patricia's eyes widened. Excuse me. Elena folded her hands in front of her. Stay strong. Mr. Vega has a first-class ticket just like you. He's in his assigned seat. I can't and won't ask him to move. Patricia's face flushed. She was losing control of the situation. Passengers were now staring openly, some whispering, some shaking their heads. The young woman with the phone was still recording. Patricia felt her stomach twist. This is ridiculous. Saiko, I'm simply asking for the same courtesy that would be extended to anyone else who feels uncomfortable. Elena didn't move. You're asking me to remove a paying passenger from their assigned first-class seat and relocate them to economy for no valid reason. That's not accommodation. That's discrimination. A sharp silence followed. Someone let out a low whistle. Daniel hadn't moved, hadn't said a word, just watched Patricia waiting. Patricia's pulse pounded in her ears. This wasn't how it was supposed to be. Elena squared her shoulders. Ma'am, we're about to taxi. If you cannot remain seated and follow the flight crew's instructions, I will have to ask you to deplane. Patricia's stomach sank. What? Elena's tone remained professional but firm. You have 2 choices. Stay in your seat quietly, or you can get off the plane. But Mr. Vega is not going anywhere. Some passengers applauded softly. Patricia felt humiliation rise in her chest. This was not how things were supposed to work. She wasn't supposed to be the one being reprimanded. She opened her mouth, ready to argue. But before she could, Daniel reached into his pocket, pulled out a leather case, opened it, and held it up. And just like that, everything changed. A gold FBI badge gleamed under the cabin lights. The air in the plane changed. Patricia's whole body stiffened. Passengers gasped. Some even laughed. The young woman recording, she immediately zoomed in. Daniel's voice was, C. Almada, partner illegible. Ma'am, he said softly, tilting his head, you would like to file an official complaint. I can take your statement right now. Patricia's breath caught. She couldn't speak. Daniel didn't move, didn't blink, just waited. And for the first time, Patricia felt truly trapped. But Patricia isn't just embarrassed, she's about to face real consequences. The silence in the cabin was thick, stretching uncomfortably between Patricia and Daniel. His FBI badge glinted under the overhead lights. The unmistakable gold emblem. It was the kind of thing you couldn't not see, the kind of revelation that changes the whole room. Passengers who had been whispering moments before were now staring openly, some smirking smugly, others wide-eyed. Patricia's mouth went dry. Her brain raced for an explanation, an excuse, a way out. This wasn't supposed to happen. The man who had tried to have her removed from the plane, the man who had implied she was a threat, was federal law enforcement. Her throat tightened. Daniel's expression hadn't changed. He wasn't smiling or gloating. He just sat there, badge in hand, eyes fixed on hers, waiting. His voice was steady, level, and readable. Would you like to file a formal complaint, ma'am? The words hung in the air like a loaded weapon. Patricia's body felt frozen, heat rising up her neck. She tried to speak, but all that came out was a weak gurgle. Daniel tilted his head slightly. She said she felt uncomfortable. He continued, polite but sharp tone. That's a serious allegation on a federal flight. If you believe I have done something inappropriate, I would be happy to take your statement. Patricia's stomach sank. She could feel the shift happening. Mom, before she had controlled the narrative, she had expected sympathy, expected someone, anyone to take her side, but now she was the one under scrutiny. A man 2 rows ahead let out a low chuckle. Oh, this is priceless, he muttered, shaking his head. The young woman recording zoomed in on Patricia's face. Elena, the flight attendant, stood nearby, arms crossed. Her face was carefully neutral, but there was something in her eyes, a silent understanding, a silent expectation. She was waiting. They were all waiting. Patricia's breathing came in quick, shallow gasps. She couldn't admit she had lied. She couldn't say she had made it all up just to get rid of him. But if she went ahead, if she pressed her claim, she would be accusing a federal agent of being a danger on a flight. And that would come with consequences. Her hands trembled in her lap. Daniel hadn't looked away. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Patricia shook her head. Barely a movement. No, crew, no complaint. Daniel nodded once as if he had expected that. He slowly closed his badge, put it back in his jacket, and reopened his laptop. Just like that, it was over. At least for him. For Patricia, the nightmare was just beginning. Some passengers murmured their approval. A couple even applauded softly. The businessman across the aisle smiled smugly and returned to his newspaper. The young woman with the phone was already typing. Patricia could feel her heart pounding. She wanted to melt into her seat, disappear, go back in time and undo the last 10 minutes. But there was no way to undo this. She had been publicly embarrassed, exposed, and worse, people had seen it, recorded it. Her eyes darted around the cabin looking for an ally, someone who might offer a sympathetic glance. No one did. Even Elena, the only person who had been patient with her, had lost the warmth in her expression. Patricia swallowed hard. She wanted to argue. She wanted to say something to regain control, but she knew deep down that there was nothing more to say. The flight hadn't even taken off yet, and somehow she had already lost. But Patricia isn't just embarrassed. She's about to face real consequences. Patricia sat stiffly in her seat, staring straight ahead. Her breathing was shallow, her face burning. This wasn't just embarrassment. This was humiliation. Daniel had already moved on. He had opened his laptop again, fingers tapping calmly on the keyboard. It was as if she didn't exist. The rest of the cabin, however, had not forgotten. Across the aisle, the businessman with the Bluetooth smiled to himself. The woman recording had stopped typing, but her phone was still angled slightly upward, as if waiting for Patricia to react. Even the flight attendants, who were supposed to be neutral, had a different air about them. Now Elena, the lead flight attendant, stood nearby, watching. Patricia felt it all. The weight of the stairs, the silent judgment in the air. She had miscalculated terribly. Her fingers fidgeted nervously in her lap, her heart pounding. This wasn't just some minor misunderstanding she could smooth over with a forced laugh and a dismissive gesture. She had tried to have an FBI agent removed from his seat. On camera, the implications were now sinking in, heavy on her chest. Her mouth was dry. Elena finally moved closer. Her tone was still polite, but no longer soft. "Ma'am," she said, keeping her voice low, "I need to confirm that it's okay for you to remain on this flight without further disruption." Patricia stiffened. A handful of passengers looked over, pretending not to listen, but absolutely hearing. She wanted to explode. She wanted to demand why she was the one being treated like the problem when all she had done was express discomfort. But Daniel's badge had changed everything. She was trapped. Now the power she thought she had was gone. She forced her lips into what she hoped was a calm expression. "I'm fine." Elena's gaze lingered. Then she slowly nodded. "I'm going to hold you responsible for that." Then she turned and walked away. Patricia exhaled shakily, clenching her hands together in her lap. It was over. At least that's what she thought. A sharp ring broke the silence. She looked up just as the young woman with the phone smiled smugly at her screen and double-tapped. Patricia's stomach clenched. She knew that look. She had seen it on the faces of her own grandchildren when they shared something online, something destined to spread fast. Her fingers tightened around the armrest. She turned slightly, heart pounding, and stole a glance at the woman's screen. The video had already been uploaded. Patricia felt as if the air had been knocked out of her lungs. The title was simple. "Racist Woman Tries to Remove Black Man from Class, Then Discovers He's FBI." Patricia's hands went cold. The flight wasn't even in the air yet, and somehow she had already lost. And if it was already online, that meant there was no way to stop what came next. She turned her head forward again, trying to steady her breathing, trying to convince herself that maybe it wouldn't be so bad. Maybe no one would care. Maybe it wouldn't spread. Maybe her phone vibrated in her bag once, twice, a third time. Patricia's chest tightened. She didn't want to look, she didn't want to know, but her hands moved on their own, digging into her bag, fingers wrapping around the device. She pulled it out and her stomach sank. Text messages from acquaintances, from family, from people she hadn't heard from in months. Each one was a variation on the same question. Patricia, is that you? I just saw a video. Tell me this isn't real. Oh my God, what did you do? Her heartbeat roared in her ears. She slid open her browser with trembling hands and tapped on Twitter. It took less than a second. Her name was already trending. The video had been uploaded less than 5 minutes ago, and yet it had already been viewed more than 20,000 times. And the comments were pouring in. Patricia's vision blurred as she read the first few. Karma is real. This lady really thought she would get away with it, Owen. I hope she enjoys the internet roast she's about to receive. Patricia's breath caught in her throat. Her world wasn't just collapsing, it was burning. And for the first time, Patricia realized there was no turning back from this. But what happens after the flight lands is beyond Patricia's worst fears. Patricia gripped her phone so tightly that her knuckles turned white. The noise of the cabin faded into the background, drowned out by the beating of her own pulse. She could barely breathe. The video was still spreading, the view count increasing every time she refreshed. 30,000 views, 42,000, 61,000. It wasn't slowing down. She blinked rapidly, her mind straining for an escape, a way to stop this before it was too late. But it was already too late. She scrolled down, reading more comments. Imagine being so privileged. Ha ha ha. She really thought she was going to get away with it. The FBI part made my whole day instant karma. Expose her name. We need to know who she is. Her chest tightened. She looked around the cabin as if searching for a way to turn back time, but no one was looking at her anymore. They didn't need to. They had seen enough. She shifted in her seat, her whole body stiff. Daniel, still beside her, hadn't moved. His fingers tapped lightly on his laptop keyboard. If he was aware of the video, he didn't show it. He didn't care, and that somehow made it worse. Patricia's phone buzzed again. She jumped, then looked down. Her sister hesitated. Then she pressed the decline button with a trembling finger. She wasn't ready for that conversation. She wasn't ready for any of this. The plane had barely taken off, and yet her world was already collapsing around her. She exhaled sharply, forcing herself to stay calm. She needed a plan, a way to fix this. She could apologize. Maybe that would help. No, that would only fuel the fire. She could ignore it, pretend she hadn't seen the video. No, that was worse. Her mind raced, her thoughts spiraling into a collision, and then the pilot's voice came over the intercom. Ladies and gentlemen, we are beginning our descent into Washington, he said. The local time is 5:43 p.m. Please make sure your seatbelts are fastened as we prepare to land. Patricia's heart sank. Landing. She had been so focused on the chaos inside the plane that she had forgotten what was waiting for her outside. She refreshed the video one last time. 97,000 views. Her name was trending. Her hands trembled as she put her phone back in her bag, trying to convince herself that she could still get ahead of this. That maybe, just maybe, it wouldn't be as bad as she thought. But Patricia still waits for the storm to pass until she turns on the news. Patricia practically ran out of the plane the second the doors opened. She ignored the sideways glances, the quiet laughter, the unspoken judgment hanging in the air. She just needed to get out. But as she hurried toward Reagan National Airport, her pulse skipped at what she saw waiting near the baggage claim. A group of reporters. Not a huge crowd, not yet, but enough. A woman in a navy blazer held a microphone close to her lips, reading from her phone while a cameraman filmed her. The now viral video shows an unidentified woman attempting to have an FBI agent removed from first class, citing discomfort. The clip has gained over 1 million views in just a few hours. Patricia stopped breathing. 1 million. That was impossible. She turned her head quickly, praying they hadn't seen her. But one of the reporters made eye contact with her. The woman's face lit up. Wait, that's her. Patricia spun on her heels, panic shooting through her chest. She couldn't be seen like this. She moved quickly, her heels clicking sharply against the tile floor. She needed to get to the exit now, but her phone buzzed violently in her bag. Texts, missed calls, alerts. She couldn't escape this. She pushed past a group of travelers, her breath short, her hands clammy. She barely made it to the sidewalk before they shouted her name behind her. "Miss Morales, do you have a response to the video?" She cringed. She hadn't even realized her name had been released yet. A taxi slowed down near the sidewalk, and she almost threw herself into the back seat. "Let's go," she snapped at the driver. Now he raised an eyebrow, but pulled away from the curb without a word. Patricia pressed her hands against her temples, eyes squeezed shut, a million images flashing through her mind. Her stomach churned. She had built her entire life on carefully managing her reputation. A good image, a respected name, and in a single afternoon it was gone. Her phone vibrated again. This time it was a number she didn't recognize. She looked at it, her heart pounding. Then, just before it went to voicemail, she slid it open to answer. "Hello." A brief silence, then a sharp voice. "Miss Morales, this is Santiago Herrera, president of the Martinez Foundation. I assume you are aware of the situation." Patricia's mouth went dry. She had been on the board of the Martinez Foundation for years, a charity that prided itself on its progressive image, inclusivity, and ethical leadership. And she already knew what this call was about. She swallowed hard. "Santiago, we're going to need you to resign." He cut her off immediately. Patricia stared blankly ahead. It wasn't a request, it was an order. Her pulse pounded in her ears. "But this is being taken out of context. The board doesn't agree." His voice was flat. "Final. We will issue a public statement in the morning. We expect your resignation by then." A sharp beep. She had hung up. Patricia slowly lowered the phone. Her career was over. Her reputation was gone. And worst of all, no one cared about her explanation. They had seen the video, and the video was enough. She let out a shaky breath. This was not something she could control. This was something she had done to herself, and now she had to live with it. Meanwhile, Daniel Vega hadn't even given her another thought. By now, he was probably in a meeting, completely unfazed, his life intact. Because for him, this had been just another Tuesday. If this story made you think, don't forget to subscribe for more impactful real-life scenarios. Yeah.